Now we're going to look at some more of the interaction between hormones and their target cells. So here is a target cell, and it's the same in both pictures. So here's another target cell. The blue Y-shaped things are the receptors, and all these green triangles are the hormone. So we know that hormone binds to receptors, on the target cell, and that is what stimulates the cell. So you can have different amounts of hormone and different amounts of receptor. So on the left here, we have a low hormone level. When blood hormone level is low, that will cause the cell to upregulate. So it's the low hormone level that causes the upregulation. So this means that the cell will have lots of receptors. So as you can see here in this picture, this cell has lots of receptors. It needs lots of receptors so that it has a better chance of catching what little hormone there is available. So low blood hormone level stimulates cells to have more receptors. The opposite of this is downregulation. So here we have a high blood hormone level. Too much hormone overstimulates a cell. And cells do not like this overstimulation. So this will cause the cell to downregulate. Which means it will get rid of some receptors. So it loses receptors. This way the cell can't be overstimulated by too much hormone binding to it. So it's the cell's way of protecting itself from being overstimulated by a high hormone level. Another way to think of this is like the volume. So if I whisper, you can't hear very well. You're probably leaning in close to your computer, maybe turning the volume up. That's upregulating. The volume is low, so you have to tune in and try to catch what little volume there is. If I yell, then you downregulate. You probably moved back away from your computer a little bit and you turn the volume down because you don't want to be overstimulated by the high volume. An example of up and down regulation comes in with type 2 diabetes mellitus. In this condition, you start with high blood sugar, which glucose is the name for blood sugar. So you have high blood glucose. This can be due to poor diet and lack of exercise. So if you're eating too many carbohydrates, you're putting too much glucose into your blood, and exercise could burn that glucose off, but if you're not exercising, you're not burning it off. So you just get all this glucose building up in the blood. Whenever you get glucose in your blood, your pancreas secretes insulin. So insulin is the hormone. Insulin binds to receptors on the cell. So if you look at this top picture here, there's the insulin. You can see it binds to the receptor, and that stimulates the cells to take up glucose. So when insulin binds to the receptor, that gate opens and glucose goes into the cell. So remember, this is insulin is a protein hormone which is water soluble. So it's binding to a receptor on the surface of the cell, and you're opening a gate to let something into the cell, characteristic of water soluble hormones. So when your blood glucose is high, your pancreas secretes even more insulin. So the more glucose you have in your blood, the more insulin your pancreas secretes. So if your glucose is really high, your insulin will be really high. And this high insulin makes your cells downregulate. So you will actually get fewer insulin receptors. So here in the bottom picture, you can see these insulin receptors are not functioning. You're down to only 2 functioning insulin receptors in the insulin-resistant cell with the type 2 diabetes mellitus. And then this gets into this positive feedback cycle. So think back to chapter 1 when you learned about negative and positive feedback. Positive feedback doesn't mean that it's a good thing. It just means that the cycle keeps repeating itself and intensifying. So then because the cell doesn't take up glucose, it builds up in the blood, which then means you get more insulin, which then means your cell downregulates even more, and this cycle continues. So you keep getting higher glucose, which leads to higher insulin, which leads to more downregulation. And if your cells don't take glucose out of the blood, it builds up to higher levels. So your cells don't respond to the insulin. So this is that whole insulin insensitivity. And then this higher level of glucose means even more insulin, which then means more downregulation, and it just keeps going.